Recently, a Magic the Gathering player dared to encroach upon the sanctity of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game by not having complete and unfettered fun against a combo deck. LC is an up-and-coming TCG creator that's been posting all kinds of analysis on Star Wars, Riftbound, and more recently, the heinous propaganda against Arthalion. He joined me over on my Twitch stream, twitch.tv/Farfa, and we sat down and covered multiple topics like free-to-play Master Duel, hand traps, resources, and of course, the learning curves involved with trying Yu-Gi-Oh! After playing Yu-Gi-Oh! For the first time for 100 hours, we had a discussion about some of his conclusions. Alright, we're here with Elsie, who's gonna be telling us, I guess, what your problem is, man. Like, what did Yu-Gi-Oh! Do to you?
I don't know. I don't think that's the conclusion for my video. I said I liked it. I've kept playing.
Oh yeah, I think your content is actually extremely good. Like, it's very well articulated. I love how you structure all your videos. It's been a breath of fresh air, and I got round to watching your video like very late. Because I mean, that was like more than 2 months ago at this point.
Yeah.
But there was, I mean, you covered so much ground, so many different topics. So we're gonna go over like a few things here, I guess. Just if you want to share a little bit about, there's some more details that I can kind of pick your brain over on specifics.
Yeah, of course.
You know, we'll especially, you know, as Dracotail's #1 fan, I cannot believe some of the stuff you said, but we'll get into that. I guess just for the people who don't really know who you are from my channel and stuff, if you want to do a quick little like, you know, what your deal is and I guess what you do.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm LC. You probably see me by my real name on the internet too, potentially, which is just Liam. I have a channel with a couple of my friends where we play Canadian Highlander, which is a like pretty niche Magic format. But I've also just like generally been a trading card game player for like 2 decades at this point. I've done content at varying different times, both written and video stuff, mostly around Canadian Highlander, to be honest. And then quite recently, I decided to make my own channel, do a first video on kind of like the learning process of Yugioh, and I've been having a lot of fun, obviously, and I kind of dove headfirst into making some more content around that, and have been having a really good time, honestly. The community is really sweet. It's been kind of crazy how much engagement that first video has gotten, and obviously all of the subsequent videos as well.
You know, I did my own little Magic thing where I tried Arena for a bit.
I watched it.
Oh, awesome. That's great. So,
yeah.
I guess, well, I mean, there's nothing to explain then. So that's my knowledge of Magic. So very limited, basically. It's essentially just like 3 play sessions of Arena. So I know, I guess, like the fundamentals, but not really much past that. Can you explain it, like, if it's possible in Yu-Gi-Oh terms, what the hell is Canadian Highlander?
Yeah, I actually can. This is a great question. So Canadian Highlander is 100 card singleton, very high power level. So it uses the vintage ban list, which is to say, like, basically nothing is banned, but then it does game balance in the same way that Genesis does. So it's a points list. Instead of 100 points, there's only 10. So like Black Lotus, which is like iconic, most powerful card in Magic's history, legal to play in this format, just costs 7 points currently to put in your deck, so you lose out on some other like pretty powerful staples that you might be playing. The games are really high variance because they're 100 card singleton, but
yeah, I can imagine.
There's still a bunch of like very consistent decks. Like turn 3 and 4 kills are like very common, which is like pretty fast by Magic standards. And what kind of tends to drive people towards the format is that the deck building process is like kind of unlike any other format, just because you get to use the Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesis term, like play yesterday's cards today. Like you really get to kind of like reach deeper into the vault of playable Magic cards to build your deck, which can be a lot of fun.
Sounds interesting. Is it like, I assume it's, I mean, most Magic formats, I guess, are fan-made, right? So
yeah, so this one was created in like one. Well, it's contentious actually where it was created. There's 3 different Highlanders. There's Canadian, German, and Australian, and they're all slightly different. And I won't bore you with the details of that. But they basically started as like fan-made formats in like one store. And at least in the case of Canadian Highlander, the store that it started at is in Victoria in British Columbia, which is pretty close to Seattle, which is where WotC is headquartered. So some WotC people ended up playing the format. So it's not like officially recognized, but it's been like written about on the main Wizards of the Coast website before. It's definitely pretty high profile at this point as far as like fan-made formats go. Like if you go on any of the major deck building websites, like it's a format that you can select and build decks for, everything like that. But yeah, it is 100%. It's managed by a council of players who are the ones who actually do the points updates. I've been on the council before, actually, like many moons ago, 10 years ago.
Wow, okay, I didn't realize you were that sort of like have you played since the beginning of Magic? Like,
no. So like I started playing Magic in the first time I played Magic was like 2002, but I was playing casually. The first time I played competitive Magic would have been like 2006.
Okay, so you're pretty new, I guess, by Magic standards.
Yeah. I've only been playing for 2/3 of the game's lifespan. Like, no, nothing basically.
I guess what's the? I mean, okay, so paper, you've done a lot of that. Now, I guess the first major area I wanted to cover and talk about, I suppose, was like the digital client. Like, I'm pretty much exclusively at this point a Masado like player, content creator. I haven't like properly played the paper game in like a while, so I'm curious what your views have been with Masado comparatively to Arena. Have you indulged in a lot of Arena? Have you played much of the online client, or are you kind of more of a in-person Magic player?
Yeah, so, and it's interesting, there are actually like two online Magic clients. There's Arena, and then there's Magic Online, which is like a very different client. It kind of looks like Dueling Book is like the closest analogy I can give you. Like it's basically a spreadsheet simulator.
It's not official, right? Isn't that like
No, it is.
Oh, is
it?
Yeah,
it's existed since 2002. It's like super old, but it's very weird. It's like not a video game in the same way that Master Duel and Magic Arena are. Like it's like you pay for cards with real money, you can sell cards in it. It's against TOS, I think, technically, but you people do buy and sell cards in it. And like you play for prizes, you can like queue for the Pro Tour through it, things like that. So I played quite a lot of that.
It's like kept up with in that regard by Wizards.
Oh yeah,
like it's still maintained.
They manage.
I did not know that.
It's managed by a company called Daybreak Games now, but it is like officially supported by Wizards. There's like a couple of weird things, like because of the kind of like Fortnite-ification of Magic, there have been some issues with digital licensing. And so like some of the cards don't make it on there. Like the Warhammer 40,000 cards didn't get on there for a while for licensing reasons.
Didn't get
but,
onto
like, in general,
Arena or didn't get onto online?
Both, yeah.
Oh,
Arena
okay.
and Magic Online.
Right.
So I've played anyway, to make a long story short, I've played quite a lot of Magic Online. That's the client that I've mostly played on. And then I've played less Arena. Like I've probably played maybe lifetime, like 1,000 hours of Arena, which like, given that it's been around for almost 10 years at this point, like that isn't actually that much time. I kind of like drifted in and out. Like when I like a format, I'll play quite a lot of Arena. And I like drafting on Arena. Like the draft client is quite good, so I've done like a good amount of drafting on Arena. But I'll have big periods of time where I play like basically no Arena, only play on Magic Online. I used to only play in paper.
And how popular is Arena? Because when I hear about Magic in any capacity, it's almost about like the paper game, your ban list and what is going on in like the actual physical game. I don't really hear, because in Yu-Gi-Oh there does seem to be online like a very kind of distinct split of like Master Duel players and paper players, and there's obviously a lot of crossover, but like there is like a solid like Master Duel only community. Does Magic have like a lot of crossover? Is there like a core Arena Magic player community, or?
I think it's kind of similar. I think like with Master Duel, obviously, because the ban list is different, you all have people who just like align with only playing the online client. I don't know anyone personally who identifies themselves as like an Arena only player. I have like many friends who play both. And I have many friends who only play in paper. So I think those two are more common, either both or only paper. Obviously, like for content creation, Arena tends to be a bit more favored just because it looks a lot better. Like filming card games is like very hard, obviously. So you see Arena used in a lot of like content creation side, but in terms of the actual communities, I don't think that there's like a gigantic arena only community. I could be wrong though, by the way. Like that, I do not speak for every arena player when I say that. That's just, but in my experience, I don't know anyone.
And how competitive is Arena? Because you mentioned you can qualify for stuff through the online client, but does Arena have like specific pathways to qualifying for events or anything like that?
Yeah, so Magic Arena has high stakes events that run monthly-ish, maybe a little bit lower cadence than that. You have to like qualify to play in those events. There's usually open qualifiers that you play through to qualify for those, or if you finish at a high place on the ladder, you'll get qualifier points towards playing in those events. And there are sometimes events on Arena that can like queue you all the way to playing on the Pro Tour. Sometimes they're just events like where you're playing for like big cash prizes. Like there are Arena tournaments where I think the max cash prize is like $2,500 USD, maybe even a little bit more. There are Arena tournaments too where you play for IRL product, like you play for like showcase booster boxes. I have a friend who won like 3 or 4 showcase booster boxes. Showcase is like the premium product. They're like more expensive boosters basically. So there is like competitive play that is native to Arena, and you can qualify through to paper tournaments playing on Arena. Yeah.
So I guess like really quickly to sum up the Arena stuff, like what client would you say is better? Obviously no bias there, but like what do you think are like the positives and negatives you found compared to like Master Duel?
I think they're pretty comparable, honestly. I think Master Duel is a very good client, like in terms of its UX. There are like a couple of like small things that come up occasionally on Arena that I find like, or on Master Duel, sorry, that I find like a little bit weird, but this might just be rules idiosyncrasies that I don't fully understand. Like one thing that I can think of that happens on Arena but doesn't on Master Duel is like, let's say your opponent searches for a card, they reveal it, they put it in their hand. In Master Duel, it immediately like gets turned face down and they shuffle their hand, but you can just check the log to know what card they have. And I know that that's because like if you then go and set a card, it needs to be like obscured whether or not they set that card. But in Arena, they do the same thing, except the card stays revealed until your opponent takes a game action that requires obfuscation of what their hand is. And there's like little things like that, but at the same time, like I think that like the animations on Master Duel are like very cool. Like the first time someone killed me with a blue eyes, I was like, oh, this is sick that you have like a laser beam fire across the screen. Like, so in terms of like UI UX, they're like pretty comparable. They're like maybe small things both ways that are better or worse, but I think that like as far as clients go, they're both super reasonable clients, and they're both like very usable. My one thing with Arena that I think a lot of people have kind of complained about historically, and they've gotten better about this, is I don't know if you play very much on your phone, but Arena runs horrifically badly on your phone, or it did for a long time. And comparatively, Master Duel ran much better on my phone, so that's a big plus for me.
Yeah, I just think it's a cultural difference with a lot of like OCG Asian players like have like a big like presence on online mobile gaming specifically compared to Westerners. So I think like they definitely made a concerted effort to have that run really well on mobile. So yeah, I guess I could never play on a mobile like seriously, but I'm glad that that's an option for a lot of people. I wanted to move on to talk about the learning curve now. So you've clearly got so much experience with multiple card games. I think you played Riftbound, right?
Yeah, I've played some Riftbound. I mean, I've played like a ton of games historically, but yeah, the big ones right now are Magic, Yugioh, and Riftbound are the 3 ones I'm playing the most. And Star Wars Unlimited. I'm playing everything. Actually, I don't even know.
Okay, awesome. So I mean, clearly, the precedent here is that you have started playing card games fresh with no background knowledge multiple times now. So what has that been like compared to Yu-Gi-Oh, compared to like Star Wars, compared to Riftbound? Like, how has that new player experience been for Yu-Gi-Oh? Obviously, in your video, you mentioned how it's pretty much like Yu-Gi-Oh's the hardest, but is there any like kind of specific things that you think were either stupid or bad or could be improved on like long term for the game? Like, what were issues you found when you were learning Yu-Gi-Oh compared to other card games?
Yeah, so I think there's kind of two ways that you can think about it. There's firstly, when it comes to like learning other card games right now, a lot of those card games are coming from the kind of Magic family of games. And as a result, if you're like a Magic player going to play Riftbound, going to play Star Wars Unlimited, or what have you, many of the other games, One Piece as well, I think kind of falls in this category. A lot of the effects look really familiar, and the kind of like general evaluation of them is different on a game-by-game basis, but figuring out how the moving pieces work is not so hard. In Yu-Gi-Oh, one thing that I mentioned in my video, and I think this is something that I feel definitely is challenging, is when you start a game and you have your 5-card hand, like you could just play all 5 cards right away, and there's not this kind of like gradual warming up into a game of like developing resources and stuff. And that's good and bad. Like obviously it's good in the sense that like once you learn the combo line, it's nice to be able to just like play through the combo line like right away and not have to worry about like, oh, do I miss a land drop here and then I don't get to play and I don't get to learn from this game because like nothing happened. Like obviously that's a pain point in Magic. For Yu-Gi-Oh, I think the big thing that I noticed when I was learning it is when you were playing against archetypes for the first time, it's oftentimes like just a situation where you kind of have to just accept that you're probably going to die to something you didn't know about the first couple of times you play against a new archetype, or you're going to have to commit to like spending a ton of time reading all the cards and hoping that you also like don't time out in a Master Duel context. So that was definitely like a pain point, and I talked about it in my video, but like the level of like esoteric knowledge required, like definitely it makes the floor for learning a lot higher. I think one thing that would potentially help with this, at least on Master Duel, is if like more of the single player stuff featured cards that you were likely to see on the ladder. Like the new story mode with like IP and SP is great. Like that's a lot better because that's actually giving you like meaningful information about like a play pattern that you're likely going to see in a decent amount of games, and it's cards that are going to show up in deck lists that you might be looking at if you're looking to like build a meta strategy. So I think stuff like that can help, but honestly, like part of it is just, this is just what Yu-Gi-Oh is. It's a game with a bunch of esoteric knowledge, and you are rewarded for like studying and knowing this esoteric knowledge in a way that doesn't really manifest in other games in the same way. Like when I started playing Star Wars Unlimited, like I didn't know the card pool, and I basically just played off of vibes for the first like month that I was playing the game in paper, but I like, you know, won a bunch of games and it was like very easy to pick up. Whereas like my first, you know, 20 or 30 games on the Master Duel ladder, like I lost to everything. Like I got Morphing Jarred one game. I played against Trickstar exactly one time and like died to that because I had no idea how Light Stage worked. Like it's stuff like that, right? Like, but I think that in terms of how to actually resolve the issue, it is like just a situation where ideally giving people like a bit more information about what is common would help. But it is at the end of the day, like kind of just a tricky problem to solve.
There's a lot to unpack there, but you know, first and foremost, the main issue that you, I think, clearly mentioned there is that there's learning how to play Yu-Gi-Oh, and then there's learning how to play Yu-Gi-Oh, right? Like there's the mechanical side of I can summon, I can go to a phase, but then there's like the other side, the esoteric stuff you mentioned, which is like you can read Habakiri, right? Like you can read the card and you can, you know, from a mechanical understanding, get what it's doing, but you don't know what it's doing, right? So
yeah,
we don't have that knowledge as a new player. And I'm just wondering, like, because I've thought about this for so long, and Yu-Gi-Oh players have always like criticized, you know, the game itself for not being new player friendly in that regard, because you just don't know what it's going to do. And obviously some great solutions, as you mentioned, would be like more in-depth solo modes that show you a familiar play pattern, etc. But I think like sometimes people bring up this idea where like, you know, it's a negative thing that you have to essentially seek out a third-party tool to basically learn to play Yu-Gi-Oh, like essentially looking up combo guides and stuff like that. And I'm just wondering if like, do you think that's actually really a negative? Because I assume the same is in Magic, right? You can learn how to play Magic, but you don't really know what your deck is fundamentally doing unless you literally just come up with the combos yourself, or you know, outsource that learning to the hive mind, right? It seems like that's just the nature of gaming. If you want to fully optimize in video games and card games, right? Like, you're kind of going to have to look externally.
I think that eventually, yeah, you are obviously going to have to look externally. I think why a lot of people gravitate towards pointing out that issue in Yu-Gi-Oh! Specifically is because of the thing that I mentioned about the esoteric knowledge. Like, you can, if you are learning to play Magic, play pretty low power games with like starter decks, or you can go and play draft, which is like a pretty low power environment on average.
Which, by the way, I loved about Arena, because I think you can literally queue into just like structure deck ladder.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
That is
great.
really
you can,
cool.
Like, finish quests and everything like that. It's really nice. I agree.
Yeah, something like that for Yu-Gi-Oh would be incredible. Just like literally like, here's a starter deck ladder and you can play that, and then once you get enough XP there, then you can go to ranked or something. Like something like yeah, an onboarding gradual system like that I think would be incredible.
Well, like currently, like there's the dual triangle event going on, right? Where like you can pick one of the special summon types or one of the extra deck summon types, and there are loner decks. And like, to me, it's like, that's the kind of event where it's like, couldn't we just leave this in the game? Obviously, like, not with the prizes, but couldn't we just leave this as a mode that people could play all the time, like with those 3 loner decks? Like, obviously playing like Ice Barrier isn't going to be like super helpful for teaching you how to play the game long term, but it would at least give you a way to like jump into a ladder playing against other people playing like similar power level strategies and like actually playing on the ladder, which could be like pretty helpful, I think. The other thing too is like, if you're playing like just like the structure decks against each other in Magic, you are still like learning pretty valuable knowledge and like skill in terms of how the game pieces function against each other. And I think that that's the thing that a lot of people point to as an issue with Yu-Gi-Oh! And it is one that I think you can kind of feel, which is that like, if you go from like, let's say you and I were playing structure decks against each other, and we go from playing like the Dark Magician structure deck and like one of the Blue Eyes structure decks against each other, if we switch from that to like playing White Forest Dragoon and Primite Blue Eyes full power, like those games don't look the same anymore, even though there are a couple of cards that are kind of salient through both those decks. Like, the game is fundamentally different when you jump from one to the other. Whereas if you and I are playing kind of intro deck level Magic decks, and like you're playing like a red-white aggro deck and I'm playing like a blue-black control deck, and we switch from playing that to going to Modern, where you play the meta red-white aggro deck and I play the meta blue-black control deck, some of the salient points are going to transfer, and even though it's going to be new cards, you're at least going to be put into situations where you have some basis for making evaluations on what your play should be. And in Yu-Gi-Oh, that's a bit of a pain point, I think.
One thing I absolutely appreciated when I tried Magic was the colors are basically your guys' archetypes. Now, obviously, there's different, like, archetypes, I get, like, literal archetypes within those colors, but, like, those colors all kind of fundamentally play quite similarly. Like, red is always kind of just sort of like the aggro fast deck, low mana cost type of thing. Like, black is doing, like, a lot of sacrificing. Green, I think, tends to, like, ramp and stuff like that. So there's kind of, like, an identity to those colors, and I think that's, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that is, like, a pretty cool thing, because in Yu-Gi-Oh! You just have archetypes, and you don't really know what an archetype's identity is until you play those cards. But I think in Magic, like, the colors sort of tell you roughly what that playstyle is like.
Yeah, 100%. Like, the colors serve as this really nice signposting system that can tell you, you know, here's approximately what your deck is going to be trying to do, even if you have almost no other information going in. Whereas if it's like, you told me, okay, you know, I'm handing you a Sky Striker deck, I'm going to be like, okay, what's a Sky Striker, right?
Yeah, is
like,
it combo? Is it
that
control?
mean?
Like, is it, you know, and these terms are very, like, you know, you can't...
They're way harder to define in Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Because every Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck, to some extent, really, in the modern age, is kind of a combo deck. But you're doing, like, smaller and greater combos depending on, like, how explosive your end board really kind of comes down to. So I think that is, like, I guess just, like, an interesting difference. I don't know if there's, like, a problem there, per se, but... the next point I wanted to bring up was keywords, and just reading the text in general. Now, I assume Yu-Gi-Oh, like reading Yu-Gi-Oh text and kind of like ascertaining logic from what is going on in the box is very different compared to your experience with other card games. Pretty much every other card game uses keywords, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So I'm wondering, like, what was that like going into Yu-Gi-Oh, knowing that there pretty much just were no keywords, like, at all?
Yeah. I mean, truthfully, I didn't notice it as much as I thought I would. And I know people have said, like, oh, keywords would be valuable, but I don't know, maybe you can answer this better than I can. Like, what would you keyword? Like, piercing is the one that I can think of, like, where you deal damage if you like attack over a defense position monster, but like you can't like really keyword that much. Like, I guess maybe you could do something like create a keyword for searching and just have like search one spell trap, like one Dracotail spell trap instead of the full sentence. But like
there's a few like general ones. That much. Okay. Well, I mean, that's good because I guess, yeah, you don't really know until you kind of have to deal with it. So you don't really feel it as from your perspective. But I guess like as someone who's played for a while, like there are certain lines that you read over and over again and it's like, okay, why is this not a keyword, right? Like, for example, you can only use X name of the card once per turn and only once that turn. It's like maybe that could be keyworded into like
sure, yeah.
Yeah, maybe they could make that HOPT, hard once per turn, OPT once per turn, like maybe like small stuff like that. If this card is normal summoned, maybe that could just be like, you know, battle cry, normal battle cry, special battle cry. Yeah. Like, so maybe like Yu-Gi-Oh could benefit from some keywords. But I think like the problem with Yu-Gi-Oh is like you aren't just. I like to use this kind of analogy where it's like when you read a Yu-Gi-Oh card, you aren't just reading the card text of what it does. You're reading like the coding. So it's almost like Yu-Gi-Oh cards have this language where it's called problem-solving card text, where it's like, and if you do, also then, if you can. These are all terms that tell you what the card, how the card functions in a chain or when resolving versus another card type of thing. Like. And I think if you put too many keywords in Yu-Gi-Oh cards, then you take a lot of the mechanical understanding of the card away, and then it becomes almost counterintuitive because then it becomes too difficult to understand what the card does without the PSCT that we've kind of been used to for 14 years, I think, since they officially introduced PSCT. Do you know much about PSCT? Have you looked into it? Like, would you be able to resolve and if you do rolling question, do you think?
Maybe, but I don't know what the initialism stands for.
Yeah.
I think actually, like, and I was thinking about making a video about this soon, actually, but I think that Yu-Gi-Oh card templating is very good. Like, if you look at other card games, it's really easy to become overly reliant on keywords and end up in a position where you create text that ends up feeling kind of vague. And in general, like, obviously, like, my frame of reference is like mostly cards that have been printed in the last, like, let's say 5 years at the most. But like, when I've been like reading Yu-Gi-Oh cards, like, I very rarely read something and go, how does that work? I sometimes, like, then, you know, 2 minutes later in my turn realize I can't normal summon something, or I can't summon something because I reptile locked myself or something. But that was on the card text. I just, you know, have turned into a Yu-Gi-Oh player and I can't read anymore. But like, it was there. And I actually think in general, the no keywords and the very verbose card text in a digital context is fine. Like, obviously, like, I've been looking at paper cards and like the text is like really small on those. And I do worry that at a certain point, they're going to run out of space in that context. But like on Master Duel, it's like, give me more card text. Like, I would rather you write an extra sentence that makes it more clear how this card works than do stuff that makes it so that I have to sort of interpret what the card does. Like, I don't hate that there's this very like logic driven if and clauses on Yu-Gi-Oh cards.
It's a double-edged sword, right? Because obviously more information is beneficial in the sense that, you know, you essentially eliminate mistakes and misunderstanding how a card works, but at the same time it's like, on average, if every card in your deck has, you know, literally on average like 80 to 120 words per card, you know, across like 5 to 10 different combo pieces, you're looking at hundreds of words to do a simple combo line. And then all of those have like minor restrictions, conditions, activation requirements. And it's like, so not only am I starting to learn how to actually play my game, I'm also trying to learn how my deck works. And then I'm also trying to learn how my opponent's deck works in a combat situation versus my cards, and how do those rulings and text intermix with one another. So it's so overwhelming from a new player perspective, whereas in Magic, I think for the most part it is pretty easy to just be like, scry a mill, hexproof this, trampled something, and it's
100%.
it's easier in that way. But you mentioned at the start, and it's like there's this very high skill floor, but once you get it, you kind of get it.
Yeah. And like, it's no wonder that Yu-Gi-Oh players like don't read, or like have this reputation of not reading, right? It's like at a certain point you can kind of forgive people for thinking that a card probably works the same way as the 6 other cards that they know do work in that order, and it's like, oh no, this one has an intervening if, so it works differently. And it's like, oh, okay, well, forgive me. I
always like to clarify this like whole not reading thing. It's like there's a difference between not reading and not fully digesting, right? Because you can read a card, but if you read a card and it's like got like 2 conditions, resolving versus another card that also has like this it's like there's a difference between not reading and not like processing, and there's so much to process when you're learning 100%. A new deck, for example. Even me, like I struggle a lot learning a new deck from scratch. I definitely have to give a deck like a couple of go-rounds before I fully understand like combo lines and stuff. So I mean, I don't know if you think there's a solution to that per se. Maybe it is just a case of like it is just skill issue, right? Like Yu-Gi-Oh is a game that needs a bit more dedication, I suppose, just to learning just learning it at a base level, like when you take up a new deck, for example, right?
And I think it's kind of okay to just like ask people to go in with their eyes wide open about that being the experience they are signing up for. Like, there's not going to be some magic way, no pun intended, to make Yu-Gi-Oh way easier to understand, because then it wouldn't be the game that people like playing, right? Like, the whole reason why people gravitate towards Yu-Gi-Oh is that it is an extremely unique gameplay experience, and a lot of that is driven by the card complexity. Like, this is just a central factor in why Yu-Gi-Oh is enjoyable, is that like a lot of the cards do have 2 or 3 effects, and you do have to work out these combo lines even to play like a mid-range deck, and people like that, and myself included, by the way. Like, I'm not, this is not a knock, but I think that to an extent it's not a problem that can be quote unquote solved. It's more just like trying to increase awareness that this is what you're opting into, and trying to find ways to maybe make it a bit easier for players to get to that point where they're able to engage with the fun parts of the game.
All right, I want to talk a little bit about, I suppose, like, the more competitive side of Yu-Gi-Oh. What do you think about hand traps, I guess? How has that been gaining or sort of progressing further into the game from a competitive standpoint, and then realizing, oh, this is actually a very fundamental part of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is like defensive cards, compared to Magic, where it's like, I don't know, Yu-Gi-Oh! In general is just like so much. Every defensive card in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is basically what do you call it? Like a blue instant that like negates or tries to stop your opponent in some respect. Like, how has that?
It's so weird. It's so weird to define that, because I always I don't know if you saw, I literally just put out a video about Ash Blossom, and I had like waited to make this video because I was like, I have not played enough Yu-Gi-Oh to have opinions about Ash Blossom yet, and then I finally was like, okay, I guess I'm gonna put one out. But yeah, it is like, hand traps are weird. Like, anyone who plays both games will usually be like, oh yeah, Ash Blossom is Force of Will, which is like the Magic equivalent of like a free counterspell that like lets you negate something for free. But it's different in the sense that, like, in Magic, free counterspells typically come with, like, a much more exceptional cost. Like, you almost always have to 2-for-1 yourself to play one of them. It's like, it's a big deal. And I come from mostly playing really high power Magic, like playing Legacy and playing Canadian Highlander, where, like, those kinds of counterspells and other free interaction are very common. So, frankly, like, hand traps didn't really bother me. Like, I'm on board, basically. Like, I'm down to be playing the free counter spells. I do think that it was interesting to kind of get into this delineation between engine and non-engine, and kind of like engage with the fact that every deck is playing a lot of the same non-engine, but I think that that's a good thing in a lot of ways, because it means at least that you get to like learn how to interact with, you know, Ashe, Bell, Droll, whatever. Like they come up often enough, and since they're not archetype locked, it's kind of nice, right? Like it actually probably helps you learn how to engage with them. But no, I like hand traps. Like I'm on board. Like I also like board breakers. Like I think that it's interesting and cool that you have to make like considered deck building choices, especially in Master Duel where it's best of one. You have to like weigh up the option of putting more hand traps in your deck at the expense of potentially bricking when you go first, like that kind of thing. Like it's good with me. I'm down.
There's been a very sort of divisive conversation in the Yu-Gi-Oh community over the last like year and a half or so with regards to the more interactive hand traps. So I don't know if you've played a lot of like well, I'm sure you have a lot to say about Dracotail specifically, but there's also Vanquish Soul and K9 who have these very specific hand traps called Azuna, Faimina, and Holy Su. I don't know how much you've played against those and what your feelings are with regards to that mechanic specifically. These hand traps that actually aren't just stopping your opponent from going too crazy with their end board, but specifically are trying to build your board in the process. What's your experience been with that, and what do you kind of think about that?
I think they're pretty interesting. Like, obviously, I think it's kind of funny that Konami was like, our game is very fast, and the player going first is super advantaged. What should we do? Let's print cards to let you play on turn 0. Like, we'll make it even faster. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that they're pretty interesting. And like, I will say that the kind of like turn 0 interactive cards that let you do something that isn't just strictly a negate, like obviously I know Ripper is just a negate, but the stuff that lets you like potentially destroy a monster or like things like that, I actually think those are like more interesting types of interaction. Like I can totally understand why the hand traps that are just pure negates are kind of frustrating. I do think that there's like some issues around these turn 0 like archetype driven hand traps that like potentially let you do something like, you know, like you get to like Fulos your opponent and then put Ripper on the stack, and it's on the chain. Sorry, the Magic player in me coming through, but like make a Ripper and then you've got both going on, and it's like kind of aggravating when stuff like that happens. But in general, like it seems like this is the direction that Konami has decided to go. It's like, why not go even faster, give the going second player more tools, which I think is fine. I think they're pretty interesting. I've been playing K9 Archmage on ladder recently, so I'm like relatively familiar with Azuda, at least, obviously. Faimina I don't like, but that's for different reasons that we'll talk about later.
So I think the interesting thing there is we kind of, I want to say maybe around about like 2021 or 22, reached this weird critical mass situation of hand traps where it's like, okay, I activate starter card A. Do you have a hand trap? Yes, no? Okay, I have to stop my play here, but did I draw extender? Okay, I'm going to keep going and do the same combo that I was going to do anyway. Do you have another hand trap? And so it creates this very binary pass-fail situation where you're either going to do your end board, irrespective of how many cards your opponent drops on you, and they're just essentially hand looping you in the process, or we kind of move away from that, which is sort of what they've been doing now, and then it's like, okay, you can still play, and you're going to develop your board in the process and try and set yourself up for the turn 2 while trying to disrupt your opponent a little bit. And so it's like, rather than just having this pass-fail situation, it's kind of like, okay, there's a little bit of disruption you can do, but the positive here, in theory, is that you're setting your turn 2 up. And so I think my perspective on this is essentially that they created these cards to pretty much just help the go second player, because Yu-Gi-Oh, in my opinion, is very much like a player A game. I think fundamentally the game is designed from player 1's perspective, and then player 2 is kind of like an afterthought, and I think that is the logic with these cards. It's like, make turn 2 better for player 2, basically, rather than, you know, almost like, I don't want to say dated, but these, you know, pass-fail binary choices that Ash Blossom, Imperm, Valor, etc. offer you.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that that's like obviously I haven't played in that universe, but like when I have been kind of like reading comments and stuff of people commenting in my videos, like a lot of people have pointed out that, like, you know, playing in this world where, you know, you play starter, your opponent has Ashe, you get Ashe, you lose the game, like, that's not actually that much better, or like that's not actually all that much fun, which I do appreciate. And so, like, I think that there's a good argument that letting people do stuff on their opponent's first turn when they're the going second player, that is just in engine, is like probably a positive thing. Also, from a balance standpoint, I think that, like, long term it's easier to balance if more of the, like, going second interaction is in engine as opposed to generic. Like, you might aspirationally, like, not have to have this really extensive dialogue about Charmies and Ashe and everything like that if more of the decks end up being engine and there's less non-engine. I think that that's also, like, potentially a positive going forward. I'm not, like, 100% convinced one way or the other on that, but no, I mean, I think that the in-engine hand trap stuff, like, in general, I think that it's a positive development, all things considered. I do just think it's funny that the solution was turn 1 is too good, let's let someone play on turn 0.
Yeah, it sounds absurd when you say it like that, and to some extent I think a lot of people were very hesitant to look at it that way, but it kind of it was a weird direction where it was kind of like, okay, well, what if you could essentially both play at the same time? And I think the greatest extreme of that was, like, tier limit mirror matches. I don't know if I don't know if that was before your time or if you've ever looked at a full power tier limit. I've heard
that, yeah, that, like, full power tier limit was, like, we're both milling all the time and fusing off things to interact with each other, and that it was, like, insanely tier 0, but also, like, a lot of people thought it was very fun and interactive.
I mean, if you ever get the time to try out a tier limit mirror match, a full power tier limit mirror match, like, it's very divisive in that way, but I mean, it really does kind of, like, people would regularly, like, question each other and be like, oh, was it my turn or is it your turn? Like, that's how much interaction there was going on during that time period, because you would constantly be triggering each other's card effects on the graveyard, and you know, that's either a good or a bad thing, but that's obviously the most extreme example. But I think maybe Konami did want to take a little bit of that and try and build all their decks like that going forward, where you are bringing the gameplay to player 2 more often rather than just, like, sitting waiting for their turn to start.
Yeah, and as long as everything gets to do it, it's probably fine, right? Like,
nothing's broken if everything's broken, I guess, right? Like,
yeah, I'll take the Dota 2 approach to game balance. Like, I think that it is this, like, awkward situation where, as they're doing it progressively, you do create this kind of, like, class of decks that are second class citizens in a way, right? Where if your deck can't play on turn 0, like, is it a deck that you're allowed to register? I think we're increasingly seeing that, like, you can't unless you've got a really high ceiling or access to something really degenerate, and they're trying to, like, get that out of the game as well. Like, I know you guys, it was right before I started playing, you had the, like, big ban list that got rid of a bunch of floodgates that people had been complaining about, that was, like, lauded as, like, oh, thank God. And I think that, like, obviously that seems like a good change. I totally understand why that was a frustrating experience, but it does mean now, like, if you're trying to play one of these decks that doesn't have a turn 0 in-engine hand trap, I do think that it has gotten increasingly difficult to do so.
That's one of the big criticisms of, like, the interactive hand traps. It's that, okay, well, what about every other deck that doesn't have one? And it's like, yeah, I feel like we're kind of moving the goalpost on the discussion there, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But, you know, hey, maybe they literally will just design every deck with a go second in-engine hand trap, right? Like, I think Cooltoon has, like, Clip now. I don't know if you've played any of the newer decks. Like, it's a pattern. Like, it definitely looks like it could be the future.
I'm waiting for my Lunalight turn 0 turn 0 at card.
Yeah, turn 0 Liger Dancer. That's what the game's missing.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what you think about the more, I suppose we call them lingering hand traps. So your Shifter, Maxi, Fualos, Droll, the hand traps that aren't necessarily, you know, the binary pass-fail negates, and they're not also the ones that help facilitate your deck's win condition. But these are the hand traps that aim to blanket shut down an entire turn or multiple turns. And, you know, what do you think about those? And have you had much of a take on those?
I don't like them. as you may or may not know, I started playing the game by playing a lot of Mitsurugi, so Droll and Lockbird has been on my shit list for a long time. I think that the one thing about them that is pretty frustrating, and this is a relatively unique to Yu-Gi-Oh effect, is like the idea that you have this lingering effect that just happens and is not interactable is pretty frustrating. Like if you compare, say, like Dimension Shifter to what is it, Dimensional Fissure, that's the continuous spell that makes everything go to banishment. It's like, okay, at least if my opponent has a continuous spell in play, I can like play to out the continuous spell and then go off and do my thing. Whereas like the lingering stuff where it's just, okay, you activated it and I didn't have a way to interact with you activating this thing, and now this effect is just going to exist, is like relatively frustrating, and I think like pretty negative, all things considered. Like I don't love Maxi, I don't love Dimension Shifter, I don't love Droll and Lockbird. I think the Charmies are like closer to reasonable design just because the quality of the lingering effect is like a little bit less oppressive. Like there's more agency on the person who got Charmed's part. Like you can, like, to an extent decide how many draws to give your opponent, but then like obviously there are hands where like you just get bricked and you know, like you're like, well, this Charmy means that I either have to give them 5 cards or not end on anything.
Yeah,
like,
I was gonna mention, so do you think that is a real choice, or do you think it's more of a illusion of choice type of thing, right? Because it's like one, you know, the most extreme example of like Maxi that people used to give is like, well, you know, it doesn't stop you from playing. It's like, well, yeah, it doesn't stop me from playing, but you know, you're gonna start your turn with 15 cards. Like, it's like, is this really a choice? You know, like,
yeah, and like Maxi isn't. Like I think that one should not be legal. The fact that it's still legal in the OCG is kind of surprising to me. Like in Master Duel, I can understand the argument for leaving it at 1 because it's best of 1. And like you want to give the player going second, like if you lose 5 coin flips in a row, like I don't know, I kind of think that there's like an argument that you want people to be able to have like some amount of of chance in those cases. But yeah, Maxi obviously like not super acceptable. I think that with the Charmies, it's the same situation that we kind of talked about with the turn 0 in engine hand traps. It's again a situation where you have like different classes of decks in a lot of ways, where there are obviously certain decks like Dracotail that can play under the Charmies very easily, and then there are other archetypes that have a really challenging time. And so I think like if they're going to continue designing with the Charmies being a big part of the metagame in mind, then it's probably fine. If they are not, and they're going to design archetypes that like need to do a lot of specific summons that are going to get potentially bricked by Charmies, then yeah, maybe it is a long-term problem. I'm not 100% sure either way. I think right now, going second and like you said, sort of being player B in the average Yu-Gi-Oh game is bad enough that there needs to be something going on to allow people to claw back. And you know, maybe if we give everyone more turn 0 interaction, they can eventually like look into adjusting that. But I think for now, of the lingering effects, the only one that I think is like particularly reasonable are the Charmies, and yeah, the rest I would very happily see not legal in any format.
okay, so making this like extremely simple and easy for our Zoomer viewers, Charmy, Fuelos, W or L?
I think they're probably W's, but it's close.
Okay. All right, so I definitely want to jam out these last 2 topics because these are the things I was very shocked by when I heard your video. Now, so it was the thing that you mentioned about the free-to-play aspect. Let me... first of all, this mention, by the way, I had this massive eureka moment when your first deck was an NR deck. That genuinely blew my mind. That never like occurred to me to be like, wait a second. There is actually a lot of really competent NR decks only, which as a new player, if you start with those, number one, you haven't invested any of your precious Ultra Gems into a specific direction. You're learning your deck. You're learning how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And at the same time, you're starting to develop a personality in Yu-Gi-Oh! And you're starting to kind of get a feel for like, okay, I actually really like control. I actually really like combo. maybe the next step after that is like, okay, I'm gonna find like what the current meta combo deck is or control deck, and then I'll invest my currency into that. So that was something I thought was amazing that you did when you were starting out. So kudos for that. However, you mentioning Master Duel as not very free to play, I've found very surprising. Do you want to elaborate?
Yeah, sure. And I think there's, to an extent, there's two different definitions here. I said not free to play friendly specifically, and I think that most of the digital card games these days are free to play by definition. They have to be because you need to get people in the door. The thing with Master Duel, and I think that what I noticed about this is that it's free to play in the sense that you don't have to invest any money, but in terms of the time investment to get to the first meta deck, it is quite a lot of time. Whether that's time being spent playing single player content or grinding it out on the ladder with like an NR deck or something like that. I went and I did the math on this because I figured you were likely to ask me about it. So if you go and you get all of the kind of low-hanging fruit gems at the beginning, you get everything for the first, say, 3 tiers of the lifetime missions that you have. That leaves you with around 10k gems, which is 100 packs, which sounds great. But if the average rate that you get URs at is 2.2 every 10 pack, and we assume you never brick and you only ever open cards that are in your engine or are non-engine cards that you need, it's still 20-ish hours of grinding to get enough gems to actually put a deck together. And while that is undeniably free to play, definitely free to play, it is not super friendly because if you mess that up, then you end up with either needing to go spend more time playing more solo player content, or maybe you just fully restart your account. That's a thing that I saw people suggest as well as an option. That's just it's not super friendly. And I want to be very clear. Arena is also not free to play. It's worse, way, way worse. And if you're a new player, it's even worse. For Arena, if you are a skilled, experienced Magic player and you play Draft, it's basically the only way that game can be free to play approachable. So I'm not saying that the Master Duel is worse than Arena. I would never suggest that. Arena is definitely worse. But if you play something like Pokemon TCG Live or the new Master or the new Shadowverse spin-off or Hearthstone, you can at least get to a deck faster. They give you enough free resources that you get to actually playing a deck that is kind of in meta faster than you would in Master Duel. But to be very clear, you can 100% be a free-to-play player forever on Master Duel. I'm not suggesting that. It's more just about the time.
It's really weird because you obviously just kind of don't know the tricks and stuff that you do to make things easier for yourself as a Master Duel player. And I will preface this and say, look, listen, I get that Master Duel is extremely free to play if you do what Farfa says in this exact step and order, in this solo mode order, and these specific crafts and dismantles to then get you these cards that then unlock this pack that give you free pack. I do get that, and this is kind of going back to the discussion we had earlier where it's oh, well, how much knowledge should be outsourced to a third-party external source to be able to teach you how to do things. But I will say that as someone who has created multiple different accounts for multiple different challenges and stuff that I've done on my YouTube channel, you can have a pretty much 80 to 90% of all of the cards you need for a meta deck within about 2 hours of creating a fresh account. Obviously, there's a lot of kind of guidance that needs to be done with that because I just kind of know what I'm doing with the client. But legitimately, if you get some of the low-hanging fruit, front-loaded gems that you mentioned, you take advantage of some of the one-time only lifetime missions. In my last challenge, for example, I don't know if you've ever had a chance to watch the video, but I did a challenge thing with Dracotail where I try and win. I have X number of lives to get to Master 1, and I have to build a deck from scratch, free to play. And yeah, like I said, within about 2 hours, I have pretty much all the cards I need. I'm missing maybe a couple ultra rares here and there. But I think why a lot of people pushed back on what you said there is that technically, if you fully optimize, Master is extremely free to play, like very free to play, and I'm assuming you probably just don't know a lot of the kind of tips and tricks that kind of get you there, right?
Well, and I think there's a difference between, again, being free to play and being free to play friendly, right? Like if we're talking like crafting specific SRs to unlock secret packs at the most optimal rate in order to get more crafting dust, like yeah, obviously, like there's ways that you can kind of hack it and do it faster. I'm surprised that you are able to get a meta deck together that quickly, though. I will say, like, obviously I don't know all of the things that you're doing. Maybe I'm missing some of the math too, but yeah, I'm surprised that, because the full power Dracotail deck is how many URs total? It's like 40 something.
Yeah, it's significant.
And main.
Yeah, I think when I did it, like I was missing Cartesias, which is like kind of important, but it's not like necessary to the deck. So like, there's definitely like a couple extra deck. I think I didn't have a Typhon for a while. I had to like play some of the weaker hand traps, but like the core of it, yeah, I put together in about 2 hours. And again, I am prefacing and understanding, like, look, this is coming from the perspective of like expert optimization of the exact path and solo mode gate to hit at the right time when you make a new account. I do understand that.
There's also there's also like a lot of high rolling too, right? Like if you are opening like a selection pack for Dracotail and then you just happen to hit whatever the other two archetypes were. Yeah. Or but if you don't, is what I'm saying. Like if you open the Dracotail pack and you hit only Archmage cards, then obviously like you're in jail and and it's much worse. But yeah, no, I mean, fair enough. And I obviously was like mostly speaking from my experience getting into it and my experience playing other digital card games, but I'm surprised it's as fast as you're saying. Like I figured when people were talking about, oh yeah, you can optimize it and get it to get a deck together faster, I kind of thought, okay, yeah, maybe I am like maybe I was slow, but I'm surprised that I was like a factor of 10 times slower than
TLDR. It's like you basically just abuse the lifetime missions. They're one-time only rewards that you get on a fresh account. So it's like literally like craft a card, win a ranked game, build a new deck, like all of those, like front load a lot of gems, and they're, you know, one-time use only. But yeah, like, and again, to caveat, it's like the first deck you get in Masadu, provided that you optimize everything, etc., is like extremely quick to get. Where a lot of people suggest and criticize Masadu, it's like it's very hard to actually get a second and third deck within a quicker time frame, because once you've exhausted all of those you know, first time resources and gems, like yeah, you're not building a new deck for like another month or two, like free to play, that's for sure. But at the same time, it's like, is that really a negative? Like, again, this is completely free to play, right? This is a video game, like, by a multi-billion-dollar company. Like, I guess at some point, you know, not to defend the big billion-dollar company, but, like, you know, they want you to buy stuff eventually, right? Now that you've invested the time and effort into playing the game.
Well, like, one thing that I think is, this is not related to free-to-play specifically, I will be very clear, because I know that this is a slightly different thing. But one thing that I found with Master Duel that was, I thought a bit strange, was that there's not really space in the client to be, like, a dolphin-sized spender. Like, your options are kind of to spend quite a lot of money to accelerate the rate at which you like, unlock new decks, or be free to play and spend a month between getting decks. And it's like, it's not like there's like a $10 pass or a $15 pass that you could get monthly that would maybe make it so that you could like get a new deck every 2 weeks instead of every month.
Yeah.
And so like I do, like, that's not a free to play complaint, obviously, but that is something that most other games do, where there are these like lower spending options. I will say though, I think that this is a distinction that comes up largely between Japanese and North American and European-based games. Like, Japanese games, I don't want to, like, overgeneralize, but a lot of the Japanese games that I've played have tended to, well, like, they're marketing towards whales, right? Like, the reality is, if you attract 1,000 new players and they all spend $10, that's worse than attracting 1,000 new players and 5 of them spending $5,000, right? So it is just, I think, an unfortunate reality of the economics of building trading card games and mobile games as well. But that's like the one other complaint. I don't know, like a month per deck as a free-to-play player is not ridiculous by any means. It's like totally fine. Again, it's mostly just that, like, I think that you probably shouldn't need the level of guidance that is required for Master Duel to get started. And that's why I described it as not free-to-play friendly. It obviously is free-to-play. And it's also one of these things, like, I had a lot of people in my comments, and I read in the comments of your video too, people being like, well, I've been playing for 4 years and I have every deck in the game. And I'm sure you do. But it is one of these things too where the longer you play one of these games, like, the more you kind of like accrue quote-unquote advantage, like the more events that you get to play where you get like plus 3,000 gems for free, it's going to gradually build up your collection in a way where you're going to eventually kind of like get ahead of the release cycle. And that's not something that new players necessarily get access to in the same way. So I do think, like, if you're looking at building like a deck that needs like almost 1,000 UR crafting points, like, that is, I mean, apparently I was just doing it wrong, and you can do it faster than I thought. But yeah.
Well, I will say in recent years, it's only gotten worse, right? Because Konami have noticed that, like, a lot of us who are the invested players, we already have Ashe, Fua, Maxi, Veiler, right? Like, we don't need to we don't need to craft those again for a new deck. Whereas if you're coming in completely as fresh as a new player, every new deck that they've made since Master Duel's release has gradually just gotten more expensive. Like, there's just more URs per archetype now than there was 3 or 4 years ago. And that's because, like, if you already have, 20% of the deck's core in UR because you play Ashe in every deck ever since the release of the game, then you're just going to need less URs, therefore you're more free to play, therefore you're not spending. So I guess, I will absolutely say that, it has only gotten worse, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And it is like, that's one of the things that I noticed when I was kind of getting into it. And like, obviously some of this too is like, from a content perspective, I didn't want to like go and make a video and be like, oh, here's my opinion about Yu-Gi-Oh! While having only played one deck. So I was like, also, I think maybe like feeling the pressure to build a new deck more than the average player would be. I think the average player is like going to be much more willing to just like play a deck for a month and then move on to the next thing a month later, and not have to necessarily deal with that same kind of pressure that I had of like, okay, well, I've played a lot of Mitsurugi and now I want to play something else to be able to have like a different opinion about other elements of the game. So like, that's obviously a factor as well.
And I'll mention, by the way, and super like, what's the word? I absolutely appreciate how in-depth, well-articulated, and just how much of a genuine chance you gave the game, because like, yeah, you did everything right. Like, you played like the shitty for fun decks, you played a meta deck, you played multiple meta decks, you got fairly high ranked as a new player, and like, I think that was incredible. Like, you generally gave it an honest, genuine shot. And I guess what was a kind of also weird, not weird, but like, you did mention that you would have otherwise have quit if it wasn't for the purpose of a video. So I guess in some ways, like, it's disappointing that maybe Yu-Gi-Oh! Just isn't as attractive as we first thought it was, right? Because, I mean, yeah, you almost just quit the game, pretty much, if it wasn't for the purposes of content creation.
Yeah, like, I don't know. It would have been close. I definitely would have been like playing less at a certain point. It's also possible too that I would have like taken a break and then like come back and like with a renewed sense of motivation to give it a try. Because the reality is, like, and I think that this is the core thing that keeps people coming back, is like, there is no other card game experience like playing Yu-Gi-Oh! It's like very unique. And I think that it's like, once you get past the frustrating elements, and it doesn't even really require you to understand what your opponents are doing, but even just like, once you get to the point where you understand how your deck works enough to like feel like you're really engaged in the game, super hard to turn back, right? Like, it's just a very, very unique and fun experience. But it's true, like, I remember like one distinct play session where I queued into Dracotail 5 times in a row. I won the coin flip all 5 times. I got 5-minute on turn 1 all 5 games, and I turned off my computer and went upstairs, and I was like, maybe I'm just not cut out for playing this game.
Was this when you were playing the Spider deck or the Mitsu deck?
No, I was playing Mitsurugi. I was playing
Really?
Queensmith Mitsurugi. Oh yeah.
Gosh. Okay, well,
Dude, that matchup is miserable. What are you talking about? What do you mean, really?
All right, let's get into the Dracotail subject, because you were very vocal about disliking Dracotail. And I'm curious what your reasoning is for, I don't need to give you my full pitch here, but in my opinion, I think Dracotail is in a fantastically well-designed deck. You've got the go second aspect of Femena, you've got the go second aspect of Ketu, which helps you when going second. It's not boring and annoying to watch compared to other decks. It's literally done for the most part in like 5 to 10 actions, which you compare to other meta decks, you're sitting for like 5 minutes plus just watching your opponent combo and combo and combo. It's got a very low skill floor, but also a very high skill ceiling. I think the deck is just genuinely like super well designed. But I'm curious, like, why you seem to hate it so much. Is it just because of the perspective of a Mitsu player, or do you think fundamentally at its core the deck is just kind of unhealthy? I'm really curious what your thoughts are.
So I think there's a couple of elements. Someone in your chat just said you'd love Jund, and I compared Dracotail to Jund for exactly this reason. So I'll explain that comparison to you first, and then I'll explain my disdain for Dracotail. So Jund is green, black, red. It's the color combination in Magic that's called Jund. It's the shard.
I didn't even know you could mix that many colors in Magic, actually. But
you can play 5 color.
Okay. Is that a real deck? Is that a thing?
Like in some formats, you've been able to play 5 colors. Yeah.
Okay.
It gets pretty degenerate. We could talk about it later. I can show you some pretty weird looking Magic decks.
Okay.
But so Jund, the basic idea of it was that like all of your cards either generated like a 2-for-1 or were the most efficient 1-for-1 interaction available in the game. And there were no good ways in the modern format in like 2014 to overcome that kind of advantage. You would just get smothered, basically. And the frustrating part about playing against Jund is you would have these moments where they would have like one card in play and you would be like empty-handed and you would be thinking, okay, if I can just draw something good here, I can maybe pull this game back. And you would like draw for your turn. You would draw the card that you thought was going to maybe pull you back into the game, play it, and then like they would draw a 2-for-1, kill it, draw another card themselves, and just run away with the game. And it was incredibly frustrating. And it was the best deck for like almost 3 years. So the way that this is similar to Dracotail, from my experience at least, is that, and this is obviously to an extent a reflection of me being someone who started with playing Mitsurugi, because the Mitsurugi Dracotail matchup is bad because Mitsurugi is also a mid-range deck and it's just worse at it than Dracotail is. So with Dracotail, there's a couple of elements that really frustrate me, I think, about playing against it. The first one is that like every card feels like it 6-for-1s you. And I think that this is like a language that doesn't exist in quite the same way in Yu-Gi-Oh! In Yu-Gi-Oh! You often talk about cards being plus X number. Like when you play it, you get a search and then you also get a body, which is basically a resource. So like it's like +2. In Magic, we tend to think about things as like how many resources does this card represent in terms of both itself and what it trades for. And when you think about like a card like Femena, you fuse Femena, you activate Femena, you fuse off 2 names. You get 2 effects from the names. You set 2 traps that draw cards. So each trap is a 2-for-1 because it's an effect plus card plus reshuffle. So that's +4 already. That's a 4-for-1. Femena itself then gets returned with the Arthalion, and it returns something else. So that's 5 and 6. And then the effects that trigger once the Dracotails get sent to the graveyard are 7 and 8. So like Femena just 8-for-1s you.
8-for-1s you.
But it does. It 8-for-1s you. And so like,
okay, I think the math there is we're definitely cutting some corners on the numbers specifically there. But
well, so this is the thing. It's not +8 in the sense of Yu-Gi-Oh! Of being plus. Like that's different. But it represents 8 pieces of interaction or cards. And so coming from a Magic context, it's like super tilting to have this kind of thing happens to you.
Okay, but you understand that you're saying this as someone who's activating Habakiri, right?
Yeah, for sure. No, I'm not like I'm not existing under the illusion that Habakiri is not also like incredibly broken.
Sure.
But yeah, like, but in that specific matchup, Habakiri is worse than Femena, so that's also a thing. And then once all of this happens, you get like 8-for-1 by buy the Femina, which they rebuy with the Arthalion. Maybe you do grind back from that case. You've saved your Ash, you counter one of the traps, so it doesn't actually 2-for-1 you, it just 1-for-1s with your Ash, and you're able to kill their board off, and then, but you can't kill them, and then they go to their turn, and they activate Femina again, and they get back the Arthalion, and you die. So for me, I am a person who likes combo decks, and I'm a person who gets really frustrated by really grindy decks that kind of like grind you into dust, and Dracotail is one of these decks. And it just like tilts me. To answer your question about whether or not I think that it is good or bad, like whether it's a well-designed archetype, I think that there's certainly an argument that it is a well-designed archetype. Notably, like, I didn't play during the Malice format, and a lot of people in my comments were like, you know, if you had played during Malice, you would appreciate this a lot more, like, for for what it is. And I think that's probably true. I think that for the Dracotail example specifically, I think that it's okay to have a kind of like mid-range grindy deck be strong, and I do think like the individual pieces of Dracotail are designed in a way that is not totally outrageous. The fact that it gets to splash the branded engine is like problematic, I think, in a way. And then I think the other thing is, this is something that happens in Magic as well. When the best deck in the format, and I do think in the TCG, like the data supports that Dracotail is at least the most successful deck in the format. What happens is when the best deck in the format is really grindy, it incentivizes the rest of the meta to coalesce around strategies that are more degenerate. And I think that that is actually the biggest negative from having a deck like Dracotail be so powerful. When you have a mid-range deck that's kind of like the apex deck in the format, the apex mid-range deck, you can run into these situations where the alternatives to the mid-range deck are to play like stun or really aggressive combo decks. Stun, not so much, I don't think, but to play like these combo decks that are really trying to go like super high ceiling. And I think that that outcome is the more frustrating part about Dracotail. I think if Dracotail was like marginally worse and was just like still a good deck but was not obviously the best mid-range deck, I think that it would be like pretty reasonable. But yeah, for me currently, I actually think like the hits in Master Duel are like pretty close to putting it to an appropriate power level. I can't speak to the TCG, but certainly when I was learning how to play, it would like that selection pack had just come out, so like there was a lot of Dracotail, and I was playing Mitsurugi, and that matchup was miserable. So certainly like my opinions were informed by those contexts as well. But I don't think that it's like the worst design deck of all time. Like very clearly it represents like a pretty reasonable design. I just think it needs to be a bit weaker.
I mean, you know, there's a lot to dissect there. You know, I genuinely just fundamentally agree with a lot of what you've said there, but I guess to like give you some context, you know, the historical narrative surrounding fusion decks has almost always been one of the weaker decks. It has been generally, for the most part of this game's lifespan, bad, right? Because just from a pure advantage perspective, this idea of like you need fusion spell and materials to then bring out monster is like, from a raw like card economy perspective, like quite poor, right? So naturally you have to make these like cards like gain advantage in some degree or sense. Chat, I'm aware there are good fusion decks. Like I'm saying, generally for the game's lifespan, like, you know, the best decks have been other summoning mechanics. So fusion materials triggering and doing things was kind of like a necessity for the mechanic itself, right? And I think that in order to bring Dracotail to a normal, like, current meta level, you know, power level, those materials need to do things. And they have to, like, not necessarily plus you an advantage, because I think that +8 you described is just not how the numbers work there, but at least maintain advantage at a pace where you are equal with your opponent, who is also generating advantage through their gameplay. I think is a reasonable way to match this deck up. And we see that even now when in TCG historically, when Jush format was made, like Dracotail was seen as like the weaker of the decks. And it was for a while until it got some really crazy branded support, but that's sort of like a different phase of the archetype. Like those 3 decks from Justice Hunters, Vanquish Soul Canine, Yummy, and Dracotail. Like Dracotail was kind of like the weaker of those 3, and so I just don't think it's anywhere near as oppressive as you kind of made it out. And then even in Mastodon now, it's doing really well, but with the release of Cool Tune, a kind of similar mid-range deck in that regard. It's, from what I understand, we still need a little bit more data on it. It's kind of like dominating. It's just straight up better than Dracotail, and that's like a synchro deck who has sort of similar like play.
The same mechanic of get things just for using your resources as resources.
But maybe that's just where like modern Yu-Gi-Oh is, right? Like that kind of just is like the standard now, maybe, right?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely possible. I think in terms of like, is Cool Tune, like Cool Tune is unhit, right? Like Cool Tune released with no pre-hits, which is like kind of surprising. That's like not how they've approached most of the other modern archetypes.
And
like
for context, they also
Bank.
made it even stronger because there's like some support in paper
Yeah,
play.
there's
like
OCG cards, right?
Yeah, the deck is
that are
better in
Master
Master Duel than it is in like TCG.
Every other format.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think is like potentially just an issue in and of itself, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously now on Master Duel specifically, the representation for Dracotail looks like more appropriate. I think still like my frustrations around getting Fimenud are like still there, although like obviously like to an extent this is like a vibes based feeling, right? Where like it's just like oh, this is frustrating. I think that especially now with it's Rahu that's at 1, right? And Lucius that's at 1.
Mm-hmm.
I think especially now, like with those kinds of like consistency hits, I think it's fine. I haven't played enough against Cool Tune yet to like, I think that it's possible that deck will cause the same kind of problem that I kind of described with Dracotail being the best deck, where if like some kind of mid-range deck is the best thing to be doing, you're incentivized to be doing really degenerate stuff. And like maybe Dracotail is strong enough. This isn't TCG, I guess we're talking about this, but in the TCG, maybe Dracotail will be powerful enough with all the branded support and stuff to have it be like more of a triangle format or like a square format with a couple of other decks.
I think in Yu-Gi-Oh, like we generally ebb and flow between these different sort of play patterns where it's like mid-range deck is the best deck, so people gravitate towards combo deck, which has a higher ceiling, but then because combo deck is better, you can kneecap it by playing like more heavy control / stun decks, and then stun decks lose to mid-range deck. Like, so we sort of kind of like go through a general cycle like that sometimes, and some decks are better than the others at that. I think with regards to Cool Tune, I think the problems that it gives in Master are a little bit different. I don't think they're necessarily like raw advantage, but this whole like ripping cards out your extra deck, having perfect knowledge of your hand, I think is one of the main issues that Cool Tune is offering. Because if
this is so interesting because that's a Magic thing that is like not a problem. Fascinatingly, I'll let you finish. Sorry.
No, that was my point. Yeah, like, do you think like hand knowledge is just kind of irrelevant in Magic? Is that kind of?
It's just more normalized. So like, there's like you will potentially have encountered this, but there's like a black spell in Magic. It's 1 mana, so you can play it on turn 1. It's called Thoughtseize. It is my least favorite Magic card of all time, even though I've played a lot of it. So you on turn 1 can play Thoughtseize, spend 1 mana, look at your opponent's hand, take any non-land from it. So you get perfect hand knowledge, you get to take their best card, and the cost is that like you've spent your first turn doing this. But it's like very normalized in Magic to have stuff like this be like linchpin parts of the format.
So in the context of Magic, is that like a good play? Is that like strong?
Oh yeah. Thoughtseize is great.
Okay.
So like obviously though, like the issue in Yu-Gi-Oh is that the games are so much faster that like when you get, I think it's, which one is the one that extra deck rips you? It's
I can't remember the name, but
Clip?
Yeah.
I don't know either. But like obviously in that context, in Yu-Gi-Oh context, like perfect information and excavating cards off the top of your deck of your opponent's deck is like way more powerful because the games are only going to last like 1 or 2 turns. In the Magic context, like there's always this kind of joke that like you can't Thoughtseize the top of the deck. So it's like, yeah, you might take your opponent's best card, but the games are going to go like 4 or 5 turns, maybe more, and your opponent might just draw either another copy of that card or like something else similar or another powerful card, and you can't ever interact with the thing that they draw for turn, so it's obviously weaker. But in Yu-Gi-Oh, it's like if the games are lasting 3 turns max and you get to look at your opponent's deck or you get perfect hand knowledge, it obviously matters a ton.
Well, I think you kind of have to go now.
I do,
correct?
yeah. I unfortunately got to go to work.
Yeah,
but,
I do appreciate having you here. You've been an absolute pleasure to talk to. I love how well articulated a lot of your points were, and I'm glad you elaborated on some aspects. So it's definitely great to hear from you.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
We wish you the best of luck with your channel. It's really good. If you guys haven't checked them out already, I'll leave links in the description, etc. to all your social. Do you have like a Twitter, by the way? I tried to initially contact you through Twitter, but I couldn't.
No, I'm
not a Twitter person.
Only on YouTube. I'm
Okay.
I'm only on YouTube currently.
That's unfortunate. Well, people can subscribe to you anyway. If you need any other content as a repayment, you know, I'm happy to do anything. If you have any ideas, you know, I'd love to repay the favor. So it's been
for sure.
It's been great to have you here on stream and of course on the YouTube video. So thanks everyone for joining me, and thanks again to you for coming on.